The evening air was soft and warm as Sarah walked slowly through Riverside Park. The golden hour light filtered through the tall oak trees, casting long shadows across the winding pathways. String lights twinkled gently overhead, creating a magical atmosphere that made the park feel like something from a fairy tale. Sarah adjusted her simple cotton dress and checked the time on her old watch. She had just finished her shift at the Henderson family's home, where she worked as a nanny for their twin boys. The job didn't pay much, but it was honest work, and she loved taking care of children. Every evening, she would take this peaceful walk through the park before heading back to her small apartment across town. As she rounded a bend near the fountain, Sarah heard something that made her stop in her tracks. It was the sound of crying, soft, heartbroken sobs that seemed to echo through the quiet evening air. Following the sound, she discovered a little girl sitting alone on a wooden bench beneath one of the glowing street lamps. The child couldn't have been more than 5 years old. She had golden blonde hair that caught the lamplight, and she wore a beautiful pink dress that looked expensive. But despite her fine clothes, she looked utterly lost and afraid. Tears streamed down her rosy cheeks as she clutched a small stuffed rabbit to her chest. Sarah's heart immediately went out to the frightened child. She approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Hello, sweetheart," Sarah said gently, kneeling down to the little girl's level. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" The child looked up with wide, tearful blue eyes. She shook her head but continued crying softly. "My name is Sarah," she continued in her warmest voice. "What's your name, honey?" "Emma," the little girl whispered, her voice barely audible. "That's such a pretty name," Sarah said with a kind smile. "Emma, can you tell me what's wrong? Are you lost?" Emma nodded, fresh tears spilling over. "I can't find my daddy," she sobbed. "We were walking, and I saw a pretty butterfly. I followed it, and now I don't know where he is." Sarah felt her chest tighten with worry. This poor child was all alone in the growing darkness. She looked around the park, hoping to see a frantic parent searching for their daughter, but the pathways were mostly empty now. "Don't worry, Emma," Sarah said softly, settling beside her on the bench. "We're going to find your daddy, okay? But first, let's make sure you're warm." Sarah noticed the little girl was shivering slightly in the evening breeze. Without hesitation, she slipped off her own light cardigan and wrapped it around Emma's small shoulders. "There," she said gently. "Is that better?" Emma nodded and snuggled into the soft fabric. For the first time since Sarah had found her, the crying began to slow. "Can you tell me what your daddy looks like?" Sarah asked. "That way, we can watch for him together." "He's tall," Emma said, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "And he has dark hair like mine used to be before Mommy took me to the hair lady. He wears nice suits like the ones on TV." Sarah smiled at the innocent description. "That helps a lot. And what about your mommy? Is she here too?" Emma's expression grew sadder. "Mommy lives far away now. She and Daddy don't live in the same house anymore. Today was supposed to be our special day together." Sarah felt her heart break a little more for this sweet child. She could hear the confusion and sadness in Emma's voice when she talked about her parents. Divorce was hard enough for adults to understand. It must be impossible for a 5-year-old. "Well," Sarah said, reaching into her small purse, "I have an idea. How about we share a snack while we wait? I have some crackers. Here." She pulled out a small package of graham crackers she had saved from lunch. It wasn't much, but Emma's eyes lit up at the gesture. "Thank you," Emma said politely, taking a cracker. "You're very nice, Miss Sarah." "You're very welcome, sweetheart. And you're very polite. Your daddy must be very proud of you." As they sat together sharing the simple snack, Sarah began to tell Emma gentle stories about the park. She pointed out the different flowers that bloomed at night, described the family of ducks that lived by the pond, and made up silly tales about the squirrels that gathered acorns in the oak trees. Slowly, Emma began to relax. She stopped crying completely and even managed a few small giggles when Sarah did funny voices for the squirrel characters in her stories. "Miss Sarah," Emma said after a while, "why are you being so nice to me? You don't even know me." Sarah looked down at the innocent face gazing up at her with such trust. "Because everyone deserves kindness, Emma. Especially little girls who are scared and far from home. Besides, taking care of children is what I love to do." "Are you a mommy?" Emma asked. "No, sweetie, I'm a nanny. That means I take care of other people's children while their parents are working." Emma seemed to consider this carefully. "Do you like being a nanny?" "I love it," Sarah replied honestly. "Even though it doesn't make me rich or famous, it makes me happy. I get to spend my days with wonderful children like you." Just then, they heard the sound of running footsteps on the pathway. A man's voice called out desperately, "Emma! Emma, where are you?" Emma's head snapped up, and her whole face transformed with joy. "Daddy!" she cried, jumping up from the bench. A tall man in an expensive navy suit came running around the corner. His dark hair was disheveled, his tie was loose, and his face was etched with panic and worry. When he saw Emma, relief flooded his features. "Emma," he called, dropping to his knees as she ran into his arms. "Oh, thank God. I was so scared, sweetheart. I looked everywhere for you." Sarah stood back, watching the emotional reunion with a warm feeling in her chest. This was what it was all about, bringing families back together. The man held his daughter tightly for a long moment, whispering words of relief and love into her hair. Finally, he looked up and noticed Sarah standing nearby. "Were you the one watching Emma?" he asked, rising to his feet while keeping his daughter close. "Yes," Sarah replied simply. "She was frightened, so I stayed with her to make sure she was safe." The man's eyes filled with gratitude as he really looked at Sarah for the first time. He saw her simple dress, her worn shoes, and the genuine kindness in her eyes. "I can't thank you enough," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm Michael Thompson. You've just saved the most precious thing in my world." "I'm Sarah," she replied. "And it was no trouble at all. Emma is a wonderful little girl." Michael looked down at his daughter, who was still wrapped in Sarah's cardigan. "Emma, did you tell Miss Sarah thank you for taking such good care of you?" Emma looked up at Sarah with shining eyes. "Thank you, Miss Sarah. Will I see you again?" Sarah's heart melted. "Maybe someday, sweetheart. You never know." Michael reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet. "Please, let me give you something for your kindness. You've done so much." Sarah held up her hand gently but firmly. "I couldn't possibly accept any money, Mr. Thompson. I helped Emma because it was the right thing to do, not because I expected payment." Michael stared at her in amazement. In his world of business and wealth, almost everyone had an angle, a reason for their actions that somehow benefited them. But this young woman, who clearly had very little, had spent her evening comforting his daughter and asked for nothing in return. "At least let me drive you home," he offered. "It's getting late." "That's very kind, but I enjoy walking," Sarah replied with a smile. "Besides, it's a beautiful evening." As they prepared to part ways, Emma suddenly ran back to Sarah and threw her small arms around her waist in a tight hug. "You're the nicest person in the whole world," Emma whispered. Sarah knelt down and hugged the little girl back. "And you're one of the bravest. Remember what we talked about. You're loved, you're special, and everything is going to be okay." As Sarah watched the father and daughter disappear into the night, she had no idea that Michael Thompson was actually one of the city's most successful CEOs. She didn't know about his penthouse apartment, his fleet of luxury cars, or his millions of dollars in the bank. All she knew was that a little girl had needed help, and she had been able to provide it. As she continued her walk home through the twinkling lights of the park, Sarah felt rich in the way that truly mattered, rich in purpose, rich in compassion, and rich in the knowledge that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could make the biggest difference in someone's life.